Today I effed up by touching what I thought was a leaf. I work at a boutique. We sell clothes and perfume and candles, that kind of stuff. So last week, we were rearranging racks for a sale and my boss tells me to move some pants around. I go over to this rack of culottes that no one ever looks at because they're ridiculous. I don't even know why they're on the floor during winter. I start flipping through them to see what size is there and I spot something small and brown on one of the pants. Sometimes we'll put a rack of clothes on the sidewalk if the weather is nice, but that hasn't been for at least a month. So I just think, damn, truly no one looks at these pants. How has this leaf been on here so long? I look at it for maybe 1 second and just brush my hand at it, to get this off. And immediately I know, that is not a leaf. So naturally, I just start screaming. This thing falls on the floor and starts making tiny screechy noises. I bolt to the other side of the store at this point because that one episode of The Office absolutely terrified me. In the process, I knock over a mannequin and dent the crap out of the wood floor. There are a few customers in the store and one of them just keeps yelling, "What's going on? What is it?" Our little old 70-year-old customer sees this tiny winged rat on the floor and starts walking towards it. I still don't understand what she wanted to do. So I'm yelling for her to move away because our rabies. Dude, this bat just takes off, flying all over the place. Cue all the customers except the 70-year/0 running in opposite directions. One knocking over a jewelry display and another taking down the curtain to a fitting room. I start yelling for my boss because this was not covered in my training. She comes running carrying 2 doormats. Looking back, I have no idea what she was planning to do with those. I grab a shoebox as if I'm somehow going to get high enough to catch it. The bat finally flew to the back of the store and crawled into the gap above our air conditioning vent. All the customers but the 70-year-old left. Props to her. She actually said I didn't think I was going to go on an adventure today. That was pretty cute. Thankfully, the bat was caught and released the next day. But yeah, in hindsight, I really wish I'd taken the extra few seconds to register what I was looking at so I could have avoided sending everyone into a complete panic and breaking a bunch of stuff. And also avoided touching a bat, even if it was a little bit cute. TL, Doctor touched what I thought was a leaf. Ended up sending my workplace into a bat's beep crazy panic. Undefined. Edit 2. I'm sorry, I added some line breaks. Also I'm going to call my doctor about getting a rabies shot. Yikes. Hilarious. And I love the 70-year-old's reaction. Adventure. Well said. We had bats in my house several times when I was a kid. Catching them and setting them free was always a fun adventure. One time I actually had 2 bats in my bedroom. They woke me up flying around in the middle of the night. It was summer, no air conditioning, and no screens, so the windows were wide open to the night. I caught one in a sheet, threw it out the window, and as I was trying to catch the second one, the first flew back in. That's when I learned that I needed to shut the windows after I threw them out. One time in high school, a bat got into our house from this old air vent that came from the attic and let out above the top of the stairs. Where my bedroom and bathroom was located, my mom's room was downstairs, so I had the whole upstairs to myself. I didn't realize that it was a bat at first though, because I'd only see it for seconds at a time when it would start swooping down at me out of nowhere before I'd run into my bathroom. I honestly thought it was a bird that had somehow gotten in. So for months this monster bird would start swooping at me randomly at the most unexpected times, causing me to scream and hide while my mom would run upstairs to see what was going on. We'd look for this bird together, to no avail. Never were able to find anything by the time we started looking. My mom dead-ass thought that I was just smoking weed and experiencing paranoia. She was convinced that I was high out of my mind, and hallucinating these experiences. For months she was irritated with me whenever I'd have these bird sightings. She'd come up and look around and then give me so much speep because she was definitely not okay with weed and would not believe me. Until one day I was out with a friend and I get a call from my mom, who's in hysterics hiding in the kitchen bathroom because a bat was in the house and was swooping at her trying to attack. She got little sympathy from me in that moment, lol. Not bats, but I went through something similar with squirrels. For months I kept hearing this scratching noise, and I told my family though something had gotten into the crawl space. They kept telling me I was just hearing trees scraping against the house in the wind and to stop being paranoid. Then finally one day my brother was walking down the hallway and saw a squirrel poking its arm through the vents of the attic fan. They had chewed a hole in the roof and had been in and out of the crawl space all summer. My turn. We thought there was a rat in our room under the bed. We told my dad and he didn't believe us, but he gave us a sticky rat trap to catch it. We pulled out one of the top drawers on our dresser and tied a piece of cheese on a string to the handle. Then we put the sticky trap under it and waited. We checked on it the first time and a chunk had been taken from the cheese but the trap was unmoved. The second time we checked, the animal had touched the sticky pad and was freaking out trying to get away from it. We got my dad and he caught it with a small trash can and a teddy bear. Turns out, It was a huge opossum. You find an opossum under your bed. Sorry, but where do you live where that can happen? I thought it was going to be poop. Yeah, that story had poop vibes. Something brown in the pants. Of course. Undefined. After all, what else could it be? Chocolate? Which one of you cowards peep my pants? Not only that, which one of you cowards peep a bat in my pants? Name checks out. That old lady had no fear. The poor little bat, and everyone else on the other hand. She's seen some things. You also sent the bat into a bat's beat panic. Poor bat. I've definitely watched too many bat rescue videos because all I could think of is the adorable Basila wrapped up like a burrito. Bat rescue videos. I''m.m.a. Need some links, fam. Basila v banana. OMG, bats are just miniature dogs with wings. The big ones are flying foxes. Even better lol. Lamau, old ladies are badass. My brother and I think we were 14 and 10 respectively, were staying with my grandparents in their country, and we were not used to wild animals. One humid night, while we were eating dinner, a bat flies in through the open doors to the apartment's balcony. My brother and I start freaking out and running from the bat and screaming the entire time. Meanwhile, my grandmother goes and grabs a newspaper and starts rolling it up. 1 second the bat is just flying around, and the next we hear a thwack, and see that my grandma just hit the bat towards the balcony doors. It keeps flying in that direction and goes outside. My grandmother just puts the newspaper back and then washes her hands. We sit back down and continue dinner in absolute awe of her. Old ladies are Batman's kryptonite. Hence why none of the ladies around Batman get too old. My mother had dementia and had to come live with my wife and I in an apartment. She knew she was having memory problems and other issues, and it was hard on her. One morning she came out and said, "There is a bat in my room." I could tell she thought I wasn't going to believe her and it was upsetting her. I have been watching it fly around for a while. I'll go take a look, Mom. I open the door to her room and there is a bat flying around the room. When I said, "Damn, you are right, there is a bat flying around your room," she looked so happy and relieved. My friend's mom messaged me one day because the hamster is above the bathroom door and she wanted me to come pick it up and put it back in the cage. I'm like, okay. Sure. Seems weird, BC hamsters don't really climb like that, but whatever. I get there and I'm looking at it and it just doesn't look like a hamster. She assures me that her 7-year-old checked the cage that morning and it wasn't in there, but I go to look anyways and yup. Definitely in the cage sleeping. So I go back down and look closer and it's a bat. So now she's super freaked out and I'm like, yeah, not touching that. So we waited for backup to arrive. Her friend, who is a science teacher, and the bat was eventually picked up and moved outside. Her friend, who is a science teacher. Ah. Yes, well trained in bat handling, as all science teachers are. Depending on the grades, students can be worse than any wild animal. Seriously though, you should get a rabies shot. Bats have such tiny teeth that they often leave no bite marks. Many people have died from rabies by brushing aside a bat and only later realizing they were bitten. Once you have rabies, there is no cure, you will die a painful death. I second this. Hilarious story, but rabies is a terrifying death. I'm very close with some vets who have horror stories about humans getting rabies. The best they can do is put you into an intentional coma until you pass away to mitigate as much suffering as possible. It's in my top list of I really FK hope this never happens. I told my mom to authorize a euthanasia on me if I ever contract rabies. The last thing I want is to die like that. Authorize a euthanasia. Laugh/cries in American. Laughs in Oregonian. Rasps in Argonian. Haha. But you should go get the rabies vaccine. I've heard bats have tiny teeth and you may not even feel if they bite you. And if you get rabies, you can't fix it. And I totally thought that the bat was going to be a crap stain. My cousin used to work at a Macy's in a very high-class part of the city. Worst part of the day was clearing out the dressing booths at the end of the day. Total train wreck. Always. So this night she's clearing up a huge pile of swimwear someone's left behind. But at the bottom there is this fairly neatly folded blouse. Cousin has been in retail her entire working life, and this pinged her WTF meter just enough that she slowly started unfolding it right where she found it. Folded up in the blouse was a turd literally the size of a loaf of bread. She folded that bad boy right back up, called housekeeping for them to deal with it, and punched out to go home. I work at a store that sells clothing and people keep harassing us to open our fitting rooms back up because the virus doesn't even stay in fabric, but I hope they never open back up for this exact reason. I've found pee before. I've found used tampons. I've found used needles. Worst part is, we have a bathroom in the store. The place you would expect to find these messes. We have a bathroom in the store. Ugh. Who wants to shoot up heroin in a public bathroom? They are so gross. I've done my time in retail too, and I have to tell you, there ain't nothing that hasn't been done in public bathrooms at one time or another. Lol. Echoing other commenters, make sure you go see a doctor for rabies post-exposure prophylaxis. Odds of the bat carrying it and infecting you are very low, but if you develop symptoms of rabies, you're already dead. Totally uncurable from that point, aka why the prophylaxis is so important after any contact with bats. The only time you don't get prophylaxis is if the bat itself can be monitored for 10 days post-contact for signs of rabies. Source: medical student. Additional info. The rabies virus travels through the nervous system from the site of the bite to the brain. The further away the bite is, the longer it takes for symptoms to appear. A bite on the face or neck is worse than a bite to the hand, which is worse than a bite to the leg. A bat would not be monitored. Ops should seek treatment right away. They would most likely be vaccinated. I believe it's always a 3-dose series. Rabies immunoglobulin rig is also given in some cases, though I doubt that would be done for a bat and in a case where it's unknown if the patient has been bitten. Rig use would be more likely if the bite came from a larger animal, especially if it was exhibiting signs of rabies. If OP had the bat and was in the US, it would be taken or shipped to the state public health, vet, or agriculture lab for testing. Aside from possibly labs conducting research on rabies, testing is generally not available elsewhere. States track cases of rabies in animals and potential and confirmed human exposures. They typically have programs to prevent the spread among wildlife. Rabies is common in raccoons, bats, skunks, etc. As others have mentioned, unfortunately the only tests in use require brain tissue to be tested. Depending upon the jurisdiction and circumstances of the exposure, some animals' pets may be held and observed rather than euthanized for testing. In these cases, the person exposed would be treated immediately. Treatment cannot wait for the observation period to end. Sadly, there are times when even pets must be tested. Testing involves making a microscope slide using the brain tissue and staining it with fluorescent antibodies to the rabies virus. The side is examined under a microscope. If the antibodies are visible, it means that they have bound to virus that is present. Testing is also done by polymerase chain reaction PCR. Yes, like for COVID, though that is less common. Source: work in a lab that performs rabies testing.